systems thinking or systemic thinking. Remember that? It's been sleeping, dormant. It's been there in the background. It's been there. It wasn't gone. But I think it's back. It's back, and it's there's a whole new generation of people embracing systems thinking. And I'm very happy. I'm happy it's back. It's been a very rich source of inspiration, and I always felt that there was a very deep truth to what systems thinking was trying to teach us. The only thing that was a bit of a problem with systems thinking or systemic thinking is that it was made so complicated that the people who, was supposed to benefit just didn't know how to apply it. They didn't know how to use it to their benefit. I'm very happy it's back, and in a very simplistic way, somehow I feel that if you put everything together, all the buzzwords and the theories and the frameworks and the methodologies, lean startup, agile, Six Sigma, the design thinking, service design, UX, I don't know, you name it. If you mash all that together, somehow I feel that you end up with systems thinking. It is the system in the end. It's always systemic. Every problem and every solution needs to be systemic. So I'm very happy it's back, and I hope it also means that surface dominant logic is going to be enriched by this. And if you're not familiar with surface dominant logic and value networks and how value flows through systems, check out sdlogic.net. Anyway, so I'm happy it's back. Let me know what you think. Is it back or has it never left? Did I just forget about it? I don't know. Let me know. Today on the show is Pak Chiu. Pak is a fashion psychologist, and he has an amazing story. I think he should write a book. I think he really should write a book. I'm not going to share much about the things we're talking about because it will be a spoiler. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. I sure did. So here we go.
Yellow, I think. That's how I like to describe myself. I'm a yellow color that floats around in Amsterdam, which is generally a grey, rainy town. And yeah, I like to admit yellowness. And I think to me, it's how people describe me is just to stay on the optimistic side. And I always like the phrase, which I always get it wrong, it's glass half empty or glass half full. I just feel like that's to me what I kind of would describe myself more, as in there's always a possibility somewhere here and there. And I don't like to see myself as an object. I think I just like to see myself as like, I don't want to say an aura because that then goes into biblical ways, but like a infectious color. There you go. That's how I would like to describe myself. Is that weird?
Is that weird? No, it made me think if I would choose a color, what color I would choose, and I think I would lean towards blue. Which is, but at the same time, it has, I think, to me, a different meaning than to many other people. So blue for me is sort of is endless. It's open, and it's the blue sky, and it's that's sort of what. So blue to me is sort of this endlessness and openness, and it's not. But I think a lot of people would say it's cool or cold, but I don't think blue is cool or cold at all. It's actually quite a. It's also warm.
I could
That's what
see
we
like
mean.
blue as in like the ocean, which is opportunities. But what is being blue like in Harlem? You know, what is it like being yourself in Harlem?
Well, so blue also. So there's
Yeah.
different ideas around colors, right? So blue.
Mm.
I also know that for some people it means structured. Like when you're blue, like you're structured. You're like a blue consultant. To us, it's also almost like a, you're very linear and very structured in that blue. That's not what I mean.
Mm.
It's for me blue. The
Okay.
emotion blue is totally different. So I don't understand that connection at all. For me, blue is actually totally different. It's openness and it's
Yeah.
endlessness and it's continuous and it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
freedom and it's nature and it's
Yeah.
yeah, I think that, and it's the ocean and it's flowing and it's
Yeah.
like that's to me blue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yellow is it warm, is it cheerful? What is yellow to me is spring.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Yeah, it is more spring. It's like blossoms, isn't it? It's kind of
Yeah.
that colour. It reminds me of daffodils. When I first moved to the UK, there's yeah, yellow is pretty much yeah, spring is pretty daffodil season. Um, Going back to the point is that I definitely can't see myself as structured. Although I like having structure because it gives me a little bit of space during the day, but I always tend myself always just not following it properly. So maybe that's a good thing to choose yellow, just because I don't think yellow is about structure. I think yellow is about connecting for me. It's about
Ah.
perhaps on the negative side, it's quite invasive. You know, it's yeah, and maybe sometimes I could be very like enthusiastic, passionate about something that it could be a bit much. But yeah, I think that's how I describe myself. Really, just a general blob of yellow navigating Amsterdam.
When is it a bit much? When you feel like, oh, a little bit too much enthusiasm.
I think yeah, I think it's I think maybe I've always been a bit on the emotive side, but generally like happy emotions. I think yeah, I love the idea of just speaking without a language. I think so. You know, I share a lot of emotions. I think sharing emotions is such a important thing nowadays. Um, this year, I think is quite hard because sharing emotions is very different. Like I think, you know, if we are doing this podcast in person, like it will be like very different than just
Mm.
doing it over the screen, isn't it? And so
Mm.
it's just yeah, yeah. I think it's that share emotion, that connecting, that always enthusiastic, and also always, you know, it could manifest itself in little small talks. And again, having lived in the UK and now Amsterdam, I realized that Western culture don't particularly like too much small talk with people they don't know or people they just know or, you know, things like that, compared to Hong Kong, like a Hong Kong Chinese original culture that Hong Kong kind of has. Yeah, so it could be a bit like, whoa, you know, more personal boundaries. Not that I usually cross it. I think my psychology career has helped me understand like
Mm.
what is the right amount. But yeah, if I can, I would love to kind of infect everyone with a little bit of yellowness. I think that's what I like to do. That's yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And so you mentioned quite a few things that are interesting to
Yeah.
kind of dive a little deeper into. For instance, you're clearly not originally from Amsterdam, but you moved.
Yeah.
But you moved. When did you move to Amsterdam?
I actually moved to Amsterdam. Well, me and my partner, we moved to Amsterdam in the year of the Brexit. So I've been living in the UK. Been living in the UK, actually London, since for my 20s. You know, like kind of learning to be an adult during my 20s in London, and then Brexit happened, and then we took the opportunity to move because my partner got a job here. But my work hasn't stopped in London until March,
Right.
April or March.
Okay.
So I used to fly back once a month to London for various reasons.
Mm.
And then it's really since March that I felt like actually Amsterdam is where my home is. I think the difficulties with London were so close, so you never really felt like you left there. When every fourth week you're already kind of flying back.
Yep.
So I moved here for maybe 3 years now, and since April is when I really have to kind of go, whoa, okay, so if this is our life, then what happens in Amsterdam, right? You know, what does Amsterdam look like for me? Definitely very grey, very rainy, but also very, very human compared to living in London, which is.
Is it grayer than London?
I think so.
Really?
London, surprisingly, is not as rainy as other parts of the UK. That's how I always feel.
Uh-huh.
So before London, I studied in Sheffield, so which is one of the hilliest areas in the UK. One of the hilliest cities, I think. So again, a huge contrast to Amsterdam, which is probably one of the least hilliest cities in the Netherlands. And then before that, I grew up from 9 to 18 in a place called Nottingham. So it's known to very, very much known as like the Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood. That's how people know it. And for people who lived in the UK, though, they know it's like one of the top 3 kind of most crime cities in the UK as well. So they have a very
is there a relationship? Is there a relationship to Robin Hood? I don't know what is that. That's Robin Hood, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, like I couldn't see any benefits for the poor. So I mean, maybe not that much. But yeah, they always have that kind of that kind of life where just be moving around.
But in Nottingham, that's where you were born.
We moved over to Nottingham. Me and my brother moved to Nottingham when we were 9.
9, okay.
It was just before 1997.
Yeah.
Because of where we're from, Hong Kong was being handed over back to China.
Mm-hmm.
So Hong Kong was run by the UK. My dad was working for the British government that was in Hong Kong. So we were allowed to apply to come over to avoid any conflict.
Okay, so you were actually born in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Every summer when we were young, we used to go back to Hong Kong because that was the time we get to see our parents. So when
the handover was the time your parents said we are going to move to the UK.
Yeah.
Was that related to
It was. They were, in fact, they never moved because their work was always based in Hong Kong. So it was just me and my brother.
Oh, sorry. Go back a few steps. I missed that one.
Yeah.
So your parents didn't move?
No.
They stayed in Hong Kong?
Yeah, they stayed in Hong Kong.
And you and your brother moved to Nottingham?
Yeah. We were both. So he moved a year before me because we moved when we were 8. So he was older, so he moved a year before. Then I moved a year after.
So where did you? Who took care of you? So
wow.
How do you send your children? Where did you go?
No, we had more or less a distant family member here that worked as in Chinese takeaways. So back in the 90s and still now probably a lot of people from Hong Kong or Asia will come to Europe to open Chinese restaurant business.
Yeah, of course.
And we have a family member who was that. So we stayed with them. We kind of really never saw them. So they were just kind of there, but not there. So in a way, we had quite a good life. You know, imagine you were like 8 or 9 and, you know, you don't have parents telling you what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. So yeah, back then it was fun, but looking back, actually, it wasn't that great to be a kid without parents. Like but that was fine. We go back every summer, and until we're about 18, when we realised that actually we can go elsewhere in the world and I think living in the UK and just maybe like separating quite early from our parents, like we never really felt like Hong Kong was home or UK was home. So traveling just became quite a thing. There was not much of a baggage maybe or attachment. I think that's
Sure.
fair to say it, so.
Well, I'm still curious because this is quite a story. This is quite. I don't know if that's common for people from Hong Kong to send your children over to the other side of the world. But I mean, they must have had a very good reason for it. I'm assuming. So what was their reason? Is it why didn't they want you to and your brother grow up in Hong Kong?
I think we came from, so going back to the point, during the 90s, the point you made about was there quite a lot of students, let's say, traveled to Europe to just stay. It was just because a lot of European education has always been seen as kind of more advanced and better than in Hong Kong. So a lot of people do. Not like, like not loads, but at least more than a niche. So yeah, there was enough. I think the difference was that a lot of those came from like a quite wealthy family, but we weren't really. My dad was a policeman, and my mum was a beautician. So they had this opportunity, and they also came from a family where they never had opportunities before. So I guess we were the guinea pig, really, of seeing like actually there's an opportunity for what they said a better life. Why don't we do it? I mean, maybe a lot of Asian, if people from Asia listening to the podcast later, they might not agree with this, but my interpretation of Asian kind of family is all about kind of sacrifice. It's all about working hard to achieve what you want to achieve. Losing things makes you stronger, and to them, especially to my dad's side of the family, it's all about, this is kind of like military camp. This is kind of like, this is what you learn. You're going to be a stronger person by being away from us and kind of etc.
Okay.
So yeah, that was their decision, and I guess we were too young to argue that decision.
Can you remember that moment?
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, usually my dad would come over with us for the first. So again, my brother moved first. My dad came with him for 2 weeks, settle him into our uncle's house, and then spent another week there, and then fly back. And for me, he also did the same thing as well. And it was really sweet. He usually gets us a toy before he leaves. So that's maybe that's kind of like what parents do. Like I'm not a parent yet, so I guess it's so hard for me to understand their world they had as well, to not feel financially as secure, but yet taking a risk, but also risking something that is very close to them. So I think that it'd be so interesting to hear. My mum is much more vocal about it, but my dad is still not really talking about it. It just happened, kind of thing. So
and your mother is more vocal about it. What does she say when she talks about that?
She just says things she misses. Like I think she just missed being a mum. I think that's what she missed. Of course. Yeah. And she always say, I wish you both are young again so we can spend time together. I think that was it. I mean, she's like totally like, she's still in her 60s. She used to come over once a year, and we used to go back to see her. So we see actually our family quite a lot during the last couple of years. But I think, there's always that, I think for her, like there is something that she felt she missed. A huge part of her life, I think she missed. And we grew up, I think my brother always say this, especially me, I grew up being very accepting of the English culture. So like sometimes a lot of things I do, I say, my parents just feels like you're being bizarre. because, like, how did you learn this and all that stuff? And yeah. Choosing to work in psychology, I think, for a typical Asian working class family is very bizarre, because is not the most ideal career they think.
Yeah, of
We
course.
can
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Then I chose fashion psychology, which is even more bizarre to
Because
them.
that doesn't even exist. I'm sorry, but that's not even a thing. That's weird. Everyone thinks that's weird. What do you mean, fashion psychologist? What are you talking about? No, seriously. So I can imagine that at least there's some question marks. Like, are you okay? What psychology and now what? So, but we'll get to that moment later. We'll get to that moment later. You're speeding things up here, and I because I'm really in my mind you're still 8.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Yeah, and you're living with your uncle.
Yeah.
You moved. So I have a son. He's 8. He's 8.
Yeah.
So I can I can relate to that very much, and also to me, because it's interesting because if I would imagine that what your parents decided to do, in my mind, and knowing that, I mean, I think parents in general love their children, and so your parents, were listening also to your mother and probably also your father, who doesn't want to talk about it. It has been a very emotional decision for them, but it must have been such an amazing, compelling reason for them to do so, in order to do this, right? Because you know what you're going to miss, and you don't have. So it's although you have amazing good reasons, it's still an emotional thing for everyone involved. So I'm thinking about my son, that I would send him, say, to Hong Kong, or or New Zealand, or I don't know, it doesn't matter, but far away, different time zone, different no, but sort of that must have been an amazing reason, but also trying to kind of get into his head. That would be, it does something. You're a psychologist, so you might be able to say it does something to you as a child. But let me just go to you're 8 years old. You go live with your uncle. You get all the freedom because your uncle is working very hard, probably. Right? So they don't. So they're not parenting you and your brother.
No. I think also because they also, in a way, they also have the freedom as well. Like in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is such a small place where the size of Hong Kong, if I remember, is the size of, I think, of smaller than London, but yet the population is reaching 10 million or something ridiculous like this. I think even for the uncle that I used to live with, I think it was also freedom for them. They moved about 3 years before us, if I remember correctly. Right. And they didn't have to deal with all the kind of the issues of living in Hong Kong. And also, as an adult in a new city, and I can kind of see that in Amsterdam, being adult in Amsterdam, and maybe perhaps just reflecting being adult for them in a new city, regardless of where the city is. There must be so much opportunities and things you want to explore. Right. And I think at that time when we arrived, it wasn't really within their mindset to stay put or to have like more of a nurturing side, maybe. So I still remember kind of coming off the airplane, and they used to show me all these photos of the UK, where it's kind of like lots of towers everywhere, Big Ben, and Buckingham Palace. But it was the first time seeing a motorway next to these kind of big kind of grey buildings. I remember it must be like a depot center and things like that, and they just continue for about 2 hours until we get back home. So it was such a different experience of what I thought it was. And I also remember that when I first landed, let's say, it just finished snowing. And as a kid living in Hong Kong, that we never traveled anywhere, we always thought snow was in children's books or in Disney films. It's so beautiful. But I remember the snow that I saw it's kind of beautiful in its own way, like snow on motorways when it's just all like slushy grey, and on the side it's still white, but
it didn't meet your expectation. It was like
no. It had a more of a, like a, how can I say it in a better way? It more have a brutalist feeling about it, which is a good trend sometimes. But as a 9-year-old, no. And my parents sometimes say it as well. So that was 1994. I moved, and the only thing that existed in a typical household was a landline, not even the internet, not even a dial-up internet. So we used to be able to speak to each other once a week, usually on the Saturday and Sunday. And again, as a kid, I think you don't really know your emotions that well, and you just get on with things. And I was like, it must be really hard for our parents to try to engage us on the phone. So I don't know, do you ever talk much on the phone with your 8-year-old as well, where our concentration levels maybe is not high?
No. Those are very short conversations, and it is me asking questions, and at the same time he is doing all kinds of other things. Like he would be like, yeah, I was school. Yeah, okay, yeah, nice. Yeah. Well, so what did you do at school? Yeah, some things.
Exactly.
So, and here's mama, like, but all right. But like just audio. I mean, if it's video nowadays, you have you can. So that's different. It's still not. I mean, we still don't have like lengthy conversations, but in that sense. But no, but it's actually exactly. So that's so if you just have a landline.
Yeah,
that's a very that's the minimum of connection that you have then with your parents or with your child.
Yeah, and I just wonder like how my parents felt back then when they probably expected that from us. Just an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old. How much conversation? How deep can you get of a conversation with them?
Well, you don't really know when you. No. I mean, as a parent, I mean, unless you already had like maybe they experienced the same with your brother or something. Like if you have an older brother or sister, but if you are like like now I have a teenage daughter. I never had a teenage daughter. I don't know what to expect at all. So I don't know. I don't know what that's like. I mean, to be a parent of a teenager, I didn't know what it was like to be a parent, of a baby, of a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. So it's all like a discovery for parents. So I can imagine for them, it's also, they might not have thought that through to that detail. Like, oh yeah, so we can't have like there's no real conversation. So how are you doing? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
All right.
I think what's making me curious is that like how do kids show kindness to their parents? But that will always be dependent on the parents, in the parents' eyes, really. How do they see their kid giving them affection and kindness and to listen? And I think
well, in mysterious ways. I can tell you, in mysterious ways.
Christmas presents?
No. By doing things they would never do. So, for instance, if my kids can be very well behaved if they are amongst people they don't know really well.
Okay.
And so they can be very nice and well behaved. They don't get. They might not get, might not be in fights together as much. When they're home, they're not well behaved. They're not kind at all. They're not nice at all. They're not nice at all. They try stuff out. They look for the boundaries. They look for for what can I get away with. That is trust. They trust you. and that is actually a way of showing affection, not like literally. I mean, affection literally would be, my kids are very physical, so they will cuddle, and so
Mm,
so they
mm,
so that's, but
mm,
that's affection, sure, but it's also the other side of,
mm,
that they feel they feel that they're safe enough to
mm.
try stuff out, to see
Yeah.
whether, to kind of stretch the boundaries, to say, how far can I take this until my father gets
Snaps.
really, yeah, really angry. Yeah, and so as a parent, you have to learn to be sort of, when I had a kid, my first of all, if you have a kid, that's the moment you get become a parent. Before that, you have no clue. When
Yeah.
your child is born, you're like, oh, that's it. How it's just like in a moment. But the thing is that I didn't have an angry voice. I don't have I didn't have I never
Okay.
had to be angry at anyone, like, stop
Yeah.
doing that now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you had to kind of say, this is the boundary, this is the, because
Yeah.
I need to give you some restrictions here, and you're not listening to me when I just say it kindly, when I say, can you please stop? Please, can just for me, I don't like you doing this. Can you please stop? They so they were like walk all over you. So you have to kind of, because they'd be crying in a supermarket. So my son, not anymore, but not when
Yeah.
she's 14. But she would lie on the ground, kicking and screaming because she wanted to have this candy,
Yeah.
right?
Which
And
is
I'd
very
be,
typical for kids, which is,
well,
yeah. Yeah.
it's like, and then I would be like, at first time you experience that, you're like, no, but sweetheart, but no, it's not good for you. And no, I'm not going to buy the candy. And by the way, we have some candy at home. It's fine. I want you guys. And we're like, what is where's my personality? Where's the script? Where's the script? What part is this? Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So children show kindness and affection, sure, but in very like I said, mysterious ways that you have to realize as a parent, like, oh, that's because they feel safe. They
Yeah.
can do this because you start noticing that when they're with strangers, they don't do that at all. You're
Yeah.
like, why are you so well behaved? And people are, they're so sweet. They're so sweet. They're so nice. They're so well behaved. And we're like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Borrow them for a couple of weeks, But with really good friends. So that was my
Yeah.
sort of the proof is in the pudding, is that when they're with friends they trust,
Yeah.
really good friends of ours and theirs, and they trust them, they do show that behavior too. And then
Yeah.
their friends are like, what's happening? They say, hey, they really like you. Because they are, you know,
They're just being themselves now.
yeah, they're being themselves.
Yeah, I think that also shows.
Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah, but I think that also speaks a lot about. Yeah, I think just like thinking back to how we grew up, it's uh, it's it's different because I think with parents, you feel like you can, like you can poke them, you can stretch the boundaries, you can test out the boundaries, because at the end of the day, you know that they're there. There's something unconditional about it, and there's something, like you said, safe about
Yeah,
things. And I think
exactly.
it's the unconditional bit that I think for me and my brother we never really understood, and I think we never really kind of got to grips with it, because I think if we kind of have messed up in any way when we were young, it was pretty much that there isn't much people around. So, well, that there isn't anyone around. So I think that's the bit that we miss from our parents. I think that's the bit that our parents miss as well. Just
Yeah,
not being there to say everything is okay. I
yeah.
think, or
Mm.
to emit that kind of that kind of feeling in the room that it's fine. You can be whoever you want, whatever you want to be,
All right.
because that wasn't the case, I guess, for us,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is really interesting. But yeah, it
That's a
was
that's a very that's a very British way of saying it's very interesting. Like, it's not just interesting.
Yeah, basically it's very rubbish, but let's just
Yeah,
say it's interesting for now.
but it can mean many different things. It usually doesn't mean interesting. It usually means something else.
Yeah.
It is very interesting, but it's actually quite profound and important. So you went to school? So you know so how did was your experience when you came to the UK, Nottingham? No Robin Hood, only grey buildings,
Yeah, grey,
slushy
grey
snow.
buildings. Yeah, yeah.
And then you went to school. What was your experience
So
there?
our school was, so we moved to a town and that was quite small. Um, so me and my brother, one other person, which I'm still friends with, were the only Asian kids there. So it was just us and like 1,400 other kids. Um, and the language was a problem for the first few years, but I also realized that actually it wasn't so much of a big deal because maybe we were still young. And I think at that age, children doesn't rely as much on language. I don't feel,
Because you didn't speak English I mean,
no.
because some people in Hong Kong do actually speak English,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we
But
were
you
taught
didn't.
English, but it's just never the same, really. Just because our English, when
Mm.
we get taught, is usually about alphabets and about writing
Ah,
alphabets,
sure, yeah.
and in the UK, there's a variation of accents as well.
Hmm.
So it's the accent that really kind of threw me. My school gave me an extra tutor, which she was Scottish. So English school with her English accent.
You got a Scottish
My
dude as
English
well.
tutor was a Scottish lady. So
Oh, I can see the picture.
it was,
Oh,
yeah, it all became a little bit of
totally
a complicated mess.
confused.
But I think yeah, it was quite easy. We all had a bike, and
Mm.
you just cycle everywhere. You knock on each other's doors,
Mm, okay.
and people just join you, and you cycle around. The town wasn't that big, and the town was one of those towns they demolished to rebuild, so everything is safe. And yeah, just grew up in a town like that, and slowly but surely just start pick up the language, pick up the culture, and I think by high school or 13 or 14, you don't really see yourself as different to others anymore.
Mm.
Even though we were still the only three, or maybe there was one more other Chinese kid in school. We were just and I don't felt our friends or people in school saw us differently. But when looking back, yes, of course there will be difference, but as a kid, I don't think you see it. And
Okay.
as as other teenagers, I don't think they judge you as harshly as what happens, in adult life, let's say. So
Okay.
yeah. So actually, once I picked up the once be able to communicate, it was fine.
Okay.
Uh, but it was a very it was a very interesting experience. Can I say?
There's the interesting again. Yes,
Yeah,
very interesting experience. So, so what? Okay, so all right.
yeah,
So you go to
yeah,
this primary school. Okay,
yeah,
so you're living with your uncle and your brother.
yeah,
You basically the way you describe it to me, it sounds like you're living without parents,
yeah,
parenting.
yeah,
So right, so which is to me, it's like wow, that's I don't think I can get there in my head how that would be, but the positive side obviously was all the freedom that you had to kind of just be whatever you wanted to be and who you
yeah,
were.
yeah,
You didn't feel
yeah.
that you were being treated differently at school, so that sounds
No.
okay. Well, you missed your parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think so. Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
summary so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you grew up and you so then what happened next? Where did you go to school? You moved,
Uh,
like so you moved.
yeah,
wh-
yeah.
wh- And why did you
I
move,
think
or did your uncle move?
No, we actually moved away from them.
How old were you then?
So 16, around 16. 16 or 17. Oh God, I can't remember now. It was, yeah, like, I think I had a better relationship with the friends I met through school than living at home, because the home environment wasn't great. So it was pretty much just, yeah, there was a lot of other kind of extracurricular things that my guardian, let's say, was doing. So we really just got into, I think at the quite a young age, we were thrown into a lot of kind of like, can I say adult challenges? Maybe there's a lot of like relationship challenges that we observed, like when we're where we're living, and there was a lot of kind of, yeah, the best
Can
way to
can
say
I
it is,
open that door? Is that because
yeah,
you just
yeah,
you
yeah.
because that like this all right.
Just like giving you a little peek and then
Yeah.
closing.
Interesting, I would say. Um, where what exactly are you talking about? So you're what do you what are the other activities
Yeah.
or
So I think our guardian wasn't the yeah. Again, I think just going back to the intention
hmm,
that we didn't realize, I guess, when we were young, but we'll get to teenager, that their intention was never really for us. Their intention was their life is here. They're taking us on because we're supposed to be family, and also there's yeah, to say it quite frankly, for them there's a bit of income for them as well.
sure.
But
Okay.
also they were navigating, living their life here in Nottingham, and they got themselves into a lot of, just a lot of relationship issues, and a lot of kind of like witnessing a lot of perhaps bullying each other, just marital breakdowns and
Right.
all that
So,
stuff.
but this is your uncle and your
Yes,
aunt.
yeah, and then we became their pawns, if that's the way to say it.
Ah, right.
So
Sure,
we
sure. Yeah.
became like kind of the thing, yeah, like we shouldn't be involved, but we were involved. But I think the thing is, like, we cannot retaliate because they're not really our parents. We're
Hmm.
never close enough,
Right.
and there's still this gap, this distance that they've always created that
Hmm.
we can never cross.
Okay.
So by the time that I think that started when we were about 11, but by the time that I was 16 or 17, again, still quite fake now. But anyway, one of those legal ages that you can start renting a room to lodge. So yeah, I rented a room to lodge because my brother was already in university. So it must be about 17 then. I just finished my A levels. They call it in the UK,
Hmm.
in a lodger's house, which is very interesting. So just a house
Yes.
with a lot of people just rented different rooms, and some sketchy people, some not sketchy people. But that was, I guess, my first taste of being an adult and just
Yeah.
looking after myself.
At
And
16, 17 ish.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
also very young, but then at the same time, because so my first response, sort of, or my first feeling is like, wow, that's so young. Like I can imagine, like that will be my daughter in 2 years. Like no, that's impossible. But at the same time, you kind of you grew up very independent anyway. So you had a childhood that kind of wasn't
yeah.
that common or not that regular. So you had to take care of yourself already
Yeah.
at a very early age. So for you, maybe that leap wasn't as big as it sounds to me, at least.
Yeah, I think, how did I even get through it? I don't even know. I mean, it was difficult. I think there was like certainly like the last few years before moving out, it was just all very, maybe also like starting to really pick up all those subtle cues, or actually start processing those subtle cues as an adult. Well, as a young adult, child
Hmm.
becoming adult kind of thing, and you just realize actually those are really powerful forces. Yeah, like you can really show dislike and coldness and rejection through actually not even saying a word. And just been working with those cues, I guess, for all those years, and then realizing actually I'm legal enough to leave the house, so I did.
Was that a big fight? Was there a big fight to make that happen? I mean, because it's which you kind of said, which is maybe a little bit cynical in a way, but it's also income for them.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it was more of an income for them. It was a bigger fight with my parents because I think my parents knew what was happening. They always say, having patience is such a strong skill to build. Like, you just need 2 more years of patience. Right. But then I was like, well, technically I don't. And that money, I wasn't earning that. And I was like, that money can go into a lodger's rent very easily with like kind of food on top. So right. It was harder with them saying it, announcing it to. I never planned this with my uncle and auntie. They never knew this until everything was planned. Right. When I told them, it felt to me, it looked more as though they expected this to come. So I think they knew. They just right. expected this conversation, and there was no resistance whatsoever.
Ah, okay. Did you expect that? Did you expect resistance, or was it a surprise?
I think like it would have been nice to have some resistance, but then I think I didn't expect any resistance.
Ah, right.
As in like, actually it'll be nice. Then you feel like, someone actually cares for you. But then it's like, well,
exactly. Yeah. Well, so to what we were earlier talking about, so, things like, so my kids are not threatening to move out yet. But my daughter would be able. She could say things like, "Yeah, I think I would like to I think I would like to have a tattoo." So she could say that. So it's on a different level. I know that. But there's this moment where you then, as a parent, want to kind of say, your brain goes like, how do I respond to that? Because she's testing me. So, do I say, so what are my options? I can say something like, all right, when you're 18, or can I say like, never, over my dead body? Or do I say something like, as long as it's on your face? Or do I say, so these are scenarios in my head, right? So, or I could say, well, if you were having one, dear, then I'm going to have one too in my neck, right? So that's all right. And or what? So that goes through your brain, like, how do I? But she's asking for some resistance.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah,
right. Because if we would have said, "Oh, fine, I don't care," that's really weird. Like that would be like, you have to care.
Yeah. And I think like if you just didn't respond, just not even like seeing you hesitate or process, I think that will like throw some alarm bells. I think just because maybe that's just me. I think when I was young, there wasn't any. Yeah, no one's going to discuss anything with us about tattoos or smoking or alcohol. It was just you do it or you don't do it, and they will not give a damn if you do it or not. And I think you just learn that by just not even explicitly saying it. You just learn it by the expectation that's been set up, and but like it's all like as a kid you don't see it, but it's all just looking back, having opportunities like talking to you right now about it. You can really pick up actually like what was the things I held on to that kept me going, and what was the thing that was challenging, but what was the thing that made me happy at that time? You become much more aware.
Give me an example of what made you happy.
What made me happy was I think seeing faces and seeing like being surrounded. I think that makes me happy. Always like crowds for some reason, and maybe that's the thing. So that's something I read this morning just before our chat was the idea of teddy bears. Why are teddy bears so important? And I feel like, by the way, I'm turning this podcast into like a child psychology one-to-one
Hey,
session.
I'm just asking questions, man.
Okay, so I used to collect loads of teddy bears. I don't know why. I used to surround my bed with teddy bears when I was really young, and then I grew up, and I still have teddy bears. Like I still got 2 or 3 at least, and I see like characters and people in them, and you don't do. It's not about childishness. I think like it carries something. What I read this morning, they call pro-social behavior. So anyway, just going back to what I read this morning, Harvard, I think, did a report on this study around teddy bears, and around, if you introduce a teddy bear to a workplace, how would it change people's behavior? So let's say you take a teddy bear, or they said a crayon, something that reminds you of a child or children. What changes? And they gave a group of adults some tests to do during these times, and they found that actually people are kinder and they show more pro-social behavior and skills if they see a teddy bear in the room whilst working, which is really like kind of, oh, that's quite strange, because teddy bear is power like rests with making children happy, not making adults happy, right? And then they take this test a bit further, where they then mapped out all these offices in this one area of the city, and they mapped how many nurseries or schools or kindergartens in the area that could signify what the teddy bear signifies for workers, in that district. And they found out the more of like schools and kindergartens and things around your workplace, the more likely the workplace shows pro-social behaviors. They call it also moral behaviors, despite, it doesn't affect their work performance. And also their work performance or the company performance doesn't also affect any of this. It's just down to the fact that, there are some kind of childhood resemblance in your space. And then I think like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, why do I still hold on to these teddy bears that I used to have when I was young? Especially, as an Asian man, being 34, still having 2 teddy bears, is still a bit weird for a lot of people. But then I think it really just symbolizes what's kind of missing when you become an adult, or maybe what I was missing when I was a child. That kind of companion, that kind of safety, that kind of, they call it like purity. I don't think it's purity. I think it's more to do with having a buddy that will never judge you, that will always be the most reliable around. So yeah, I was just making all this connection this morning of like, and in this conversation, it felt like, that made me happy. Actually having an inanimate object around that reminds me of, just a bit of safety, I think. That's really interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's and I have my children have. Well, my daughter now she's not interested anymore in teddy bears and those kind of toy animals. My son obviously is. He has his big shark and a big huge dog, and he can't sleep without them. He has to have. There are like 3-4 animals he needs to have in his bed, and if they're not there, we have to go look for it. And if he goes somewhere, he takes at least a shark, the dog, because it turns into his pillow as well, which is actually really filthy, because he's like, but it's not like, we can't wash the thing that well. So like, okay. But that's really interesting. And my daughter, she had this kind of toy rabbit, and she would take everywhere. We were on vacation one day, and I was at a gas station, and we had a sandwich there, I think somewhere in France, north of France, and we forgot. She put the rabbit down, and we got into the car and went to vacation. And she forgot. And so we called the gas station, and on the way back, we picked it up, and it
Yeah.
was really not on our way, but we had to go back for this,
Yeah.
this thing. And it's not like we knew it was really important. In fact, I knew it was so important that in case she would lose it, because it was like if that one went missing, we had to look for it everywhere. I bought two of them. So I bought another one, and it was and I had it in a box in my closet, just in case she would lose it. I had another one, but I didn't think about this well enough. At least I didn't thought it through, in that sense that when you use a toy and and she chews on it and she sleeps on it, and the whole thing becomes really not really it wasn't, it used to be pink, it wasn't really pink anymore, and it was like and the insides were all crumbled, and I don't know what happened to the thing. So when she never, so we did actually, she didn't really lose them. At one point I thought, I'm just going to show her the other one.
But she'll know.
As a surprise, like I put that one in, but the thing was like bright pink and fluffy and all new, and it was really, she was like, what's that? What is that? You're like, what's going on? It's not the same. Anyway, but it's so important. It's such an important thing, and still it's there. I mean, we're not going to throw it out. No, it's of course not.
No. And again, I don't know why I brought that up as well. I'm thinking,
I know why. Yeah, of course, because this is sort of you growing up, and without parents, in a country where at first you don't even speak the language well enough to kind of, to connect, and still, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Maybe not consciously, but if you look back, that's it's almost. I mean, I think you could call it traumatizing. Of course, I mean, it should be. If you're a human being, that should be traumatizing, right? To a certain extent. And in that sense, what I find remarkable is that specifically your father said, well, this is going to make you more tough. And maybe you did get more tough, and probably you did, but at the same time, if I look at the person sitting in front of me, I wouldn't describe you as a very tough person at all, because you're all about kindness and happiness and spreading yellow and no, but it's like well, that didn't work.
I try to make the link sometimes.
You're a psychologist. You're a fashion psychologist. That wasn't the plan. Your father, you were had to be like, at least I don't know what he had in mind, but like a tough business person or something, banker or something.
Which, by the way, my brother became a tough business person, a banker.
Okay, so it's 50% success rate.
Match that expectation. I don't know how. I don't know why. Really, I feel like it's okay. It's I think there was, when we were young, there was enough, like in psychology terms, we call like enough like early warning signs to show that actually this is not okay for someone to grow up in. But we did it, and I think maybe that's the way how I kind of learned to just continue, or maybe the way I learned that maybe that part, if it's missing for someone, it could be very empty. I think the reason I went into psychology when I was, I still feel, this isn't my personal opinion, but I still feel asking someone 16 and 17 to choose a university degree that defines their career is still too early, I think. I think no one really knows what they want to do when they're 16 or 17. But hey, back then it was either between fashion and psychology. And I thought
that was the two options you had. You said it's either fashion or it's psychology. And you chose psychology.
Yeah, I think because at that time it was the most difficult time in my life, and I think psychology resonated more. And I think it all came down to, I just don't want people to feel empty, I think. And I think, like I was just fascinated by how come all these things that goes on inside you is so powerful. I'm not using any particular words because, I wasn't even learning psychology. I don't know what psychology was back then. I think I just called it like, what's inside our brain that makes us so powerful, that we create our own world in there, that we projected onto what's around us all the time. I could have interpreted the experience of my guardian very differently, but I didn't. And why did it make it different? I think that's what led me to it. And that's what led me to like kind of really my mission, like always have this idea of like, I just don't want to see another person cry for no good reason. I think
is that your mission?
Yeah, I believe in crying. Yeah, well, when I was doing the psychology, for sure, I think, like seeing people sad, to really put it, seeing that feeling, seeing that scene when someone lose, let's say like when seeing your daughter lose her teddy bear, that's kind of like very like, that's something that I really want to help people with. And I think, when working in mental health services, there was not that kind of feeling, but there was a lot of, time that you can really actually help people. And,
because you were 16, 17, you moved out, you started studying psychology, right?
Yeah.
And how was that experience at the university or college, or where did you go to school? Where was the school?
So I moved out to finish my, let's say, high school. That's the most translatable, I think, like a degree or whatever it's called. And then went into university in a place called Sheffield, which is even more north than Nottingham. And then that was to learn this side of psychology. So learning about human behaviors, learning about, the typical child psychology, attachment theory, what is addiction? Like it covered all aspects of how does basically a human interact with the world.
Right.
As a child, as an adult, as an adolescent, with problems, without problems, and really focus on what makes us human, and society, obviously. So that was probably the easiest part of my life. I think that 3 years, it was very structured. Everyone was very open, made really, really good friends during university time, like everyone does anyway. I think because everyone's in the same boat, I think everyone shared this kind of way of living, way of thinking. And then after those 3 years, it was then back to, then chose to move to London because it was really exciting. And those 3 years really gave me strength to really think about, actually, I can do this and I can choose an adult life that I want to choose. Because I feel like, and when you're 18, you feel very invincible, don't you? You feel like, yes, this is, or 21, or when you finish uni, you're like, yes, I can do this and all that stuff. And then moved to London, then spent another, I think 9 years actually working in mental health services, continue getting more trained and more specialized.
What kind of work did you do in mental health services?
I worked in mental health hospitals, mainly, to help people with learning disabilities. So it's for people with like mental health problems, it's, life is hard, and for people with other kind of difficulties in their life, it is also harder because a lot of times services are not really catered to anyone that has that's different in any way. So I kind of went down that focus and had a really brilliant mentor that taught me about, essentially psychology is not really about just being fascinated and helping someone. It's actually, like that person, how would you help them to live their life they want to choose to live? So it became much more bigger than just focusing on their mental health. And then just follow her with my career, and then spent another 2 years doing a research around what happens to people with learning disabilities that most of the time have mental health problems, but also being in prison. So this group became more niche, like the people that I started to really kind of think about, and to see what happens, because usually the statistics will show people who are vulnerable that has a criminal record will find it really hard to get out of this criminal cycle, this criminal community. So that was the work then, and afterwards I was like, I'm still really interested in fashion. I'm still like, I feel like fashion has a huge role to play with the way we feel about ourselves, the way we deal with happiness and loss, and at the same time, the creative side really is the bit I think, whilst really liking what I did, learning about this kind of, let's say, humanity and kindness, and what makes a human flourish, ideas flourish, community flourish, but also I really miss being creative. So that's why I then trained myself in fashion psychology. And
how did you make that leap? How did you, so you were in psychology, you started working, you did research, and then what, they went to study fashion?
I just went, I feel at the moment I was reaching 30, and again, such an immature age, but again, you still feel invincible. You're like, I can do this. If I have made like psychology as a career that I enjoy, I can always make fashion as a career I enjoy. There was a catalyst there as well, where it was coming off the last recession, so 2010, 2012, and then I worked for a national health service in the UK, so still government funded, but there were many cuts everywhere, and the outcomes for people's well-being was very much shifted to in my eyes, to a very monetary way of thinking. And I was like, if business is, I think, what kind of, a lot of people would say, like a gravity problem, a problem that you can't change, then why don't I just go head on, be in the creative, somehow bring my kind of idea of psychology in, don't know how back then, and be very transparent that actually we still work in a business model, and see what happens, instead of just having the frustration every day working in the National Health Service, where your outcome is very different to what the trust, the organization outcome is. And also at the same time, at one of the fashion schools in London, they started a new course called Fashion Psychology. So I was the second year cohort for them. So I was, again, their guinea pig. And I continued.
That's a theme.
I continued really define what is fashion psychology to me, what kind of vision I have with what I do, and coming to Amsterdam, learning more, interacting more, got myself onto a little bit more of a marketing kind of communication course to really help me kind of define those ideas, and just seeing how clothes or fashion can be a force for good through understanding the psychology side of it, the human relationship we have with objects, especially the objects that we wear, that we put on. So that's how I got here.
And it's not a teddy bear, but it is
not
similar.
A teddy bear,
but it is similar.
No,
there is a relation. It's still whatever surrounds you. Well, you said, I like to be surrounded, and to me, it's like it's also I think there's a link to fashion there. But also, and it's teddy bear, it's people, it's the clothes you wear. All these things have meaning. But a fashion psychologist. So, and I understand sort of the relationship between, obviously, fashion and the way you feel and what you try to communicate, and your identity, and it's relevant, especially if you also think about children. You can see different generations, different, they're searching, like my daughter's searching for her identity through clothes, and then nowadays it's obviously. It's always been, especially for girls, obviously, kind of tough, because you get all these images of these perfect people, and now more than ever, because it's it's with them all the time through Instagram and TikTok, and everything is You know, so it's so is that sort of the space that you are kind of active in? Is that what you're dealing with?
Yeah. I think it's focusing back onto why fashion matters, and I think that's a really good example of the way you said it. Like, you know, for us building, especially when we're so prone to really trying out building our identities, you know, it's such an important way, exciting way to really build like what you think you are and to just mark the way you change. I think that's really exciting. And a lot of this came from just, you know, take that career jump, working in fashion, started in retail, doing a lot of internships and starting different jobs, and started then studying fashion psychology, meeting a lot of people working in fashion. Is that a lot of people went into fashion with that idea in mind, is that clothes is, you know, what more or less our second skin. Like, you know, it's so personal and so selfishly important. But the way how the fashion industry runs is so impersonal, so much about production, so much about replacement, so much about waste, so much about, you know, just so driven, I guess, by growth. There's this disconnection between what is being kind of like the human and well-being side from what is a fashion business, full stop. And my work is really to actually, you know, if we be able to actually really understand from a business perspective, from a fashion industry, I guess, perspective of what really drives people to build their wardrobe. What's those special elements in there? What are the stories they try to say? You know, can we have better designs? It might not even be clothes. It might be, you know, actually something else that we've never ever imagined before. But let's not work with an end product where, you know, for our company for this season, we need to make 16 dresses, the style of dresses, you know, 10 shirts. Actually, maybe this season is making 3 shirts that actually, but most of our cost, most of our work is actually about community services, some kind of way of talking about fashion. Or, you know, these are, you know, but led by why do people need fashion? Full stop. And then just to experiment and see how would fashion change besides just talking about a product, or like, you know, what's new. And also that's why I then start focusing on design thinking, because design thinking, to my knowledge, it hasn't really been introduced to a fashion kind of context, except for gaining user insights of how to sell more and how to get people to stay on your website for longer. It's very focused still, and I went to D school to do my thesis, and looked brief training. Then took design thinking to a Parisian fashion house, and really just defined what does it look like. You know, not every single step per se, but how would it fit into a fashion rhythm. And I think that's what kind of spurred me on to go, look, we can actually design better, or design something we've never seen before, which is really exciting, but ultimately meets the brief of why fashion matters for people. And yeah, so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm kind of in the moment redoing every day. See, you know,
so if you
what does it look like, right? How does it change? Yeah.
So if you, so no, we talked about a lot of things, and I'm curious, you know, because often you don't share these stories like in one go, like, you know, like from your birth to where you are now. But if you would kind of connect things together, sort of the way you grew up, and who you are now, and what you're doing, the way you look at the world. How do you see? What did you take with you, or what are the things that have shaped you the most? What do you still recognize now in your character and the way you relate to other people, or the way, or the work you do, or
yeah, it's so hard. Yeah, like I think how do I relate? How do I see people? I think all the connections I have is people can upset you. People can just think back in their childhood. You know, people might not align to the way that, not everyone is going to do things in the benefit of others, but actually, no one is bad. I think that is really a huge thing, a huge connection, especially now, bringing it all back to now, like just never thought my guardian is a bad person. Just never thought, the people that I worked with in mental health services, despite they might have committed horrific crimes, it's just not necessary to see someone as bad. And then also in working in fashion now, it's very much, I'm sure you're aware of this, like fashion now, like most part of our society, is showing where it's either you or me, you and them, because you don't believe in slow fashion, you're a bad person, or, you can really see this kind of way of how we, and I just feel like, I really don't think there is anyone that's bad, because inside us, all of us is craving for this something, and if whatever I can, at least I can do, is to stop someone losing or having that feeling where they lost their teddy bear. That's a really good way of saying it. Then I think I'm doing a good job. Like if I can provide someone, oh God, I sound so like design thinking, D-school business oriented way of saying it. If I can meet someone's needs, and actually help someone thrive, that's crazy. I think that would be great. And also there's one interesting thing, which I don't know, maybe next time we talk more, you can help me with it. I recently have opportunities to teach fashion psychology in pretty good, like leading fashion schools around the world, which is great, which is, that's how I would love to see how fashion psychology will grow, to influence other kind of people who are training in classical fashion way. And I literally have like any topics I want to teach, I can teach it. So I taught a bit of what is creativity, what is imagination, what is design thinking, what is, design thinking in a sustainable angle. But I also had this mission of teaching about kindness to fashion students, which I think it came across as quite bizarre for them. But I still don't really know why I really wanted to do that. I just thought it's a very important skill, and perhaps it's a skill that made me, I think that made me communicate first when I moved over here. Like, actually people show kindness to me. The Scottish English tutor showed kindness to me. Otherwise, I was such a slow learner with language, but she did, the way I communicated with other people was through kindness. And to this day, I'm still teaching it.
I wrote down a little bit earlier because of because of this kindness topic. I wrote down still looking for kindness, or maybe it's more like continuously looking for kindness, or it's this, because if I would link it, and I'm not a psychologist, you're the psychologist, so you should know better, but I'm not. But to me, it is the theme of kindness is that the one thing that you've been missing when you were a kid, when you were growing up, is kindness. There is no kindness except for people who are not part of your family, but the people that were actually, supposed to show you kindness, they were there, so didn't show you kindness. They were just there, and it was practical, and it was sort of a, you had to kind of, it was for some, it was almost more like business-like. For your parents, it had to do more with your future, and it was important to grow up tough, and all these are, and again, these probably are not bad people, of course, but it is sort of this kindness. And that's why I think it's really, to me, it's sort of similar, in the sense that, the teddy bear, the fashion, teaching people kindness. You also, you want to take care of people. It's like, I don't want people to be sad. I don't want them to lose their teddy bear. And I think it's sort of something you missed
Yeah.
that you're bringing back into or that you took with you, and this is something that you are also you know probably.
I guess.
So I will tell
Yeah.
you this: if you're in your 30s, when you're in your 30s, again, I'm not a psychologist, but I've been in my 30s, and I know that when you're in your 30s, you're starting to be able to reflect on your life. You're starting to be able to kind of distance yourself a little bit from yourself, and kind of see sort of the things that have shaped you, and the influence of your parents, who your parents were and who you are, and the difference between the two, and what you took with you, et cetera, et cetera. So that's in your 30s that you can start kind of to kind of be able to reflect on these things. And I think so that's a really interesting age in that sense, because you can see those connections.
And also that's quite a nice kind of just hearing someone saying it, because I guess no one really ever said it really, and it made me think of like why do I want meaningful stuff happen? Why sometimes I'm upset with businesses, especially certain kind of fashion businesses where it's all about being competitive, it's all about being strong, it's all about being lethal, and yet like for me, one of my kind of key things about talk about well-being, talking about like what would make, in my eyes, a fashion business survive is actually demonstrating kindness, because maybe that's something that's always been missing for me, but I always notice it's been missing in a very typical business model and structure or environment, let's say. And this idea of soft skills, right, that a lot of people talk about, and maybe that could be a good reason why I'm really attracted to this side of work.
Yeah, of course.
And I really want fashion to be a force of good, because we should care about people regardless of if it's work, if it's business. It's still people involved. Or maybe it's just me still being needy and want everyone to dance around with teddy bears and bring their teddy bears.
Well,
yeah. Who knows?
Why not? Yeah. Why not? So true. So yeah. So I hope you're going to find a lot of kindness, and I hope you're going to spread a lot of kindness. I think you do already. I think you are a very, very kind person, and I think your positivity, or you radiate that, so that you're doing really well. So, so which is thank God. I think it is an amazing story. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's very powerful. I think it will resonate with a lot of people. I have a lot of other questions, but that's for another time.
No, I mean, thank you for having me. I mean, I when sometimes when people ask you to talk about yourself, you always just never think you're interesting to talk about yourself. So I didn't know if my story was interesting at all.
This is like a Hollywood movie. This is your Disney movie where the snow is, but then the snow has to be really white when you land. No, this is not. No, it's not Disney. It's not a Disney movie.
Yeah.
It's not a Disney movie.
My Disney story will happen on like HBO or something, where there's too much negativity going on that Disney can't handle.
I think you should consider writing this down. No, I'm not. It's not a joke. I'm serious.
No, I just thought I've never actually written anything like this.
Because I think there's a lot of people, especially people, Asian people, not just Asian people, but I think a lot of Asian people who've lived through this, who've been through this in one way or another. It might not be all the same, but I think there's a lot of people who have experienced this, and I think you can be someone to show, the positive outcome and how to deal with these things, and so. I think it's extremely powerful story. So
thank you. I just never actually thought of it, but because I never told my stories, so I never really thought anyone would be interested, but this is actually quite powerful to just hear that actually it was all worthwhile. It sounds like in a way.
Yeah. So now you can write a book and become rich, and then finally make your parents happy.
Yeah. As in, like, it wasn't just happening because it was happening. I guess it was actually an interesting part of my life. So that was actually quite crazy to hear.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Thank you for having me.